Welcome to the Inside Carolina On the Beat Live podcast. We're back live. Gregory Hall is home from vacation or a trip or wherever he was. Clearly, the oldest guy in the room could not handle the tech side of things. I'm going to blame it on Zoom. That's what we do. We blame it on somebody else around here. So I did that, and I couldn't get it done. I just couldn't. So thanks, Gregory. I'm glad you're back. Why don't you introduce who we have here? Because this is going to be fun. It's going to be different. Since I was called out, I will preface it by saying, since I was called out on somebody's live stream yesterday, I made an invite to the two parties that called me out by name. And the one that was most adamant called me out failed to show. But we do have the other one. Who we got, Gregory?
We have video intern Kirsten Clark down here taking over Luke Buxton's role. Glad to have her on the show. She was on assignment yesterday. We had four of us on assignment yesterday for National Signing Day, so she's here to talk a little bit about her business trip yesterday to Greensboro, North Carolina. And then we have the man that doesn't need an introduction, Donnie Scoops Callahan, with his Christmas sweater. He's the only one in the festive mood here. So, Don, Kirsten, thanks for coming. We got Greg here in a little bit. Greg will be on. He's en route to his house from the beautiful Cary, North Carolina, back to Holly Springs. So he'll be here in a little bit. But for now, it's us four.
Yeah, somebody's already said Gregory has earned himself a raise.
Is Greg always late?
No.
Really? Because he's always late for like any sort of meeting we have. He's always the last one to walk in the door. I probably shouldn't call him out like that.
Wow. I mean, you've been on the show for 30 seconds and you're already calling out the man. No, Greg is he wants to be the last one come in, so all the eyes turn.
Gotcha.
When they see the door open, everybody's expecting Greg. And but we live with it because he's the best in the business at what he does. Let's talk a little bit about, and Kirsten, I'll bring you in, and if I ever mispronounce your name, I'm gonna say Ms. Clark because I've always liked that name.
I like that. That works.
I will do that. Tell us about your trip to Greensboro. Yesterday is always, or signing day is always crazy on Inside Carolina especially, and it works for a couple reasons. One, because Don does what he does, and then Ross and him do the live stream, but also because Inside Carolina's got great people to go out across the state and even states. And Gregory's, Gregory went to Virginia, in case folks didn't realize. But you went to Greensboro. Tell us why you were in Greensboro and why it was such a big deal for Carolina football.
I did. So I went to Greensboro to Grimsley High School, where Travis Shaw goes. If you don't know the name Travis Shaw, you need to know it. 5-star defensive tackle, number one in the state, 6'5", 330 pounds, flexible, can rush the pass, quick, athletic. It was he signed yesterday to UNC. Just a big moment. This was my second time going to Grimsley for him, actually. I went back in August for his commitment announcement. But I just think he'll be a great addition to UNC. Both times I went, it was great. Great guy to talk to, confidence through the roof. But I think that's what UNC needs right now. So, that's why I was in Greensboro.
Absolutely. Gregory, what'd you do yesterday?
I made the luxurious 2.5-hour trek through the rolling hills of North Carolina, Virginia, up to Lynchburg, Virginia, to hang out with number one offensive tackle in the country, 5-star, the second 5-star in the class, Zach Rice, at Liberty Christian Academy in the Pope Chapel. I think it's Pope Chapel, Pate Chapel maybe, one of the two, where he signed alongside three of his fellow high school classmates. They had 3 football players sign, quarterback to Virginia, and then a tight end linebacker to Army West Point, and then a female basketball player track star to Wilmington, actually. So they had a fun little ceremony up there. I hung out with Zach and his mom, Miss Rice. It was her birthday the day before, and so he talked about that and their relationship. They're extremely close. You've probably seen both of them on Twitter. To our listeners, to our viewers right now. And yeah, just hung out with them, talked with Zach a little bit. He talked about his mindset that he's bringing to UNC because he'll be here on January 7th. Kirsten is Travis. He's an early enrollee too, yeah?
He is, yep, he'll be there
Yeah, so
January 7th also.
they'll both be here in Chapel Hill fairly soon. And Mac talked about hopefully 4 or 5 of the 8 early enrollees. Don might know more about this than I do. Are going to try to practice at the bowl game for the bowl games. For the bowl game practices, there you go. They can't be in the bowl game, but if they get all of their exams done and are officially graduated, they can come down to Chapel Hill and practice with the team during the bowl game practices. So hopefully, I know Zach's going to try to do that. He mentioned it. He's not sure yet. He's still got some online stuff to do. But yeah, just went up there, met Zach for the first time, met his mom, and got to see him officially sign the dotted line. And his wasn't a formality. He didn't send it in beforehand or whatnot. He actually signed the official documents during a ceremony, which not a lot of people do. So, yeah, it was pretty cool to go up there and see that happen. Because, I mean, Travis is the number 2, is the second highest rated recruit UNC's ever signed since 247 Sports started tracking it behind Marvin Austin. And Zach Rice is right behind him at number 3. So 2 huge gets for Carolina.
Don, I'll bring you in here. People already commenting on your get up and the cat walking around. You got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And you've been quite busy. But even without those 2 guys, Carolina's class was pretty impressive. But they clearly put the class over the top, first in the ACC, top 10 in the nation at the moment. Can we really quantify how important Travis Shaw and Zach Rice are to Mack Brown's program at this time, or is it something that'll we'll be talking about 4 years down the line, what these guys were able to do?
I mean, it's hard to quantify it, but there's a lot of symbolism involved with a lot of this stuff. I mean, obviously those guys are incredibly talented, 5-star guys, from the star perspective means there's a really good chance that they're going to be big time players, high draft picks once their college careers are over. But from, other elements that it matters, such as the fact that UNC had a difficult time fending off Clemson, particularly with in-state recruits for the longest time. And Travis Shaw, yes, you can probably, if you want to make the argument about Tony Grimes, but Clemson wasn't in it to the end with Tony Grimes, but Travis Shaw was the first true one where Clemson, North Carolina were finalists and UNC clearly beat them out. So that was significant there. Zach Rice, obviously an out-of-state guy, a little bit different situation, but you're battling Alabama, you're battling Notre Dame, which was a lot stronger of a contender than what most people think, according to his mother. And also Virginia was one of the bigger, contenders there, just because of his connections to that program, and the fact that UVA had been recruiting him. Well, particularly UVA's offensive line coach had been recruiting him since he was a freshman. So it was really difficult to overcome that, but obviously UNC did. But I mean, these are 5-star guys, and just saying that you're signing 5-star guys is just, it says a lot. It means a lot. It affects things later on in the upcoming classes. If you look at what Sam Howell, just signing Sam Howell did for in-state recruiting, I think that had a really big impact later on in later classes. You look at Tony Grimes, really, if you think about it, greatly influenced this class, even though he was signed the prior class, but then reclassified. But I don't know if UNC gets all these Virginia guys without Tony Grimes. So I think that Zach and Travis will obviously have impacts on the football field, but they'll be felt in other ways in later classes.
I mean, UNC was one of 6 schools to sign 2 5-stars in this cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is just crazy to say. I don't think it's like since starting covering this team 4 years ago, and even since I got to Carolina 6 years ago, I never thought that would be something that a sentence that I would say and actually mean, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's amazing what Mack has been able to do. And Don, it sort of goes to your point that you talk about a lot, is that current results don't really matter. Game-to-game results don't really matter in recruiting. I mean, Carolina did not have the year they were supposed to have this year.
No, absolutely. And I mean, and a lot of those recruitments ventured into the season. Andre Green didn't decide until November. Zach Rice didn't announce and really decide until October. George Pettaway was in September. I mean, these were guys who were the top of this class who committed during the season while North Carolina wasn't doing very well. So, but, they believed in just the vision and the trajectory that they're being pitched, and really come down with relationships and all those sort of things, and just perception.
Yeah. Question. Let me ask you a direct question, and it's speculation and all, but no, we've talked about it before. Mack Brown can sell, and I want to get everybody's opinion on it, but I'll start with you. Mack Brown can sell hope better than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He can sell hope and vision better than anybody. So with all the coaching changes, and especially in the Coastal, that clearly helps North Carolina.
Here's Greg.
Greg's coming in. Is he here? Well, good.
Oh, there he is.
So he'll give me the real answer. Greg, we're talking about recruiting, Mack Brown's ability to sell hope. But I want Don's thing first. At what point, Don, does on the field
the sweater there, Don?
I know. Don't flatter him. He's already getting props on by the fans on the chat. So
I can't see the fans. How do I? Is it in the YouTube?
You got some fan people.
I'll have to do that.
Yeah, mute it.
I want to make sure all my attention's on this question. No.
Yes. The question is, at what point do you have to produce on the field to continue to have high level and high recruiting classes?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. And you would think this past season, because what is this, year 3, right? Yeah. So you would think this past season, if the results are, next season are similar to this season, it's going to get really, really hard, really, really hard, because anytime someone says anything about, pitching what North Carolina can be, the opponents are going to say, they're saying this, but they've been saying this for years and they haven't been able to produce. So I think really next year, you need to do something, but yeah, I mean, it is a good question. I'm curious to listen to hear what everyone else has to say.
Kirsten, what you think?
It's important. Hold on 1 second. Greg, it's important to know before you keep complimenting Don that he was busting your chops 30 seconds in that you were late. So
That's all right.
Fashionably late, man. When you carry the weight, you can walk in whenever you want. Kirsten, you've been covering this team for a year now. At what point do the results on the field need to match the discussions and the vision?
Yeah, well, I think you're right in saying that Mack Brown does a really good job of selling, the program and the team. Just listening to Travis Shaw yesterday, he talked a lot about, what Mack had said to him and people at UNC knowing his name. And that played a really big role in him committing to UNC and signing yesterday. But I think, too, it's still kind of early. Mack's only been back. This is his second year now. So I think he still has a little bit of time, to not do great as they haven't been in the last 2 years. So I think that plays a big role in it. And these guys in this recruiting class feel like they're the ones that can make that change. So I think it's just, the fact that Mack hasn't been here quite that long. And they feel like they're, the class that can bring that change that needs to come to UNC. So
what do you think, Gregory?
Is it more about wins or is it more about draft picks to these young men? Someone just posed that in the chat about draft picks because I think that's I just think that's interesting to bring up because I think it matters.
And I know that's usually kind of pointed to by a lot of people, but you can get drafted anywhere. And you can always say, oh, at this place, an offensive line coach can say, well, look at the guys that got drafted at all these other places. I actually think perception is the most important item when kids make a decision. And yes, perception is dictated by what you do on the football field. And Ross and I actually had a really good conversation about this, maybe like a month or two ago. But if you have a coach who can kind of spin the perception, and Mack Brown is really good at that. And I think that's what has helped him be such a good recruiter is that even when things aren't going so well, I mean, we see it in the press conferences, he's able to spin things the way he wants them. And he's really good at that with his words and everything. But I think perception is, and if you think about it, you ask anyone, best program, they're going to say Alabama usually, maybe Georgia, maybe Clemson. And it's, yes, Alabama puts those guys in the draft, but every once in a while you do get teams that have a lot of, the it factor with the kids. And you're like, why is that? They don't do this or they don't do that. And it's just because, the coaches at those programs are able to just change the perception to those particular kids.
And I think when it comes down to it too, I mean, if like you mentioned, the way Mack and then the staff sells the team, it's like, look, we're bringing you in to help us win. We're not just going to win like just because, right? So I think that plays a role too, selling to these recruits. That's like, look, we want you to come in and you're going to help us win. Like, you have to put in the work. We're not just going to give it to you. We're not just going to give you wins just because you're on campus. So I think that might play a role as well to these kids, as far as if we're talking about selling and perception, all of that, is they understand that they're embracing the vision that's being pitched to them and they want to be a part of it and they want to contribute to it, not just it being handed to them as well. I think that might play a role.
Greg, your thoughts here. I mean, somebody said wins and draft picks they go hand in hand, and they do. But if you look at Alabama, I mean, how many guys off Alabama's defense get drafted every year? Like all of the ones that are eligible to be drafted, basically. So how does Mack keep it up? Look, recruiting class eventually, and we've talked about this on this show plenty of times before, eventually you have enough talent to cover up whatever deficiencies there are. But Carolina's still not there yet, even with this class, maybe in 23, 24. But Greg, where does it start having to pay off on the road to keep it up?
Fans are probably not going to like this. I don't think there's any rush. And I think what you just said there, Tom, is exactly right. Is if John Bunning's a good example, right? Because by the time he got fired and he had been in town, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it was, 6 years, right?
About 3 too long.
Well, that's a different topic, Tommy. But to this day, he's like, we almost had it turned around. We almost had the guys we wanted in to be able to really start building and recruiting. And Don could tell you, I mean, some of those last couple of classes he signed, I mean, even the 03 and 04 classes, I know a lot of those guys didn't hang around, but those were top 15, top 20 classes. Mm-hmm. So he was doing a better job. And you look at some of those guys in those late classes that Butch Davis was able to benefit from, Deontay Williams, Kendrick Burney, Bruce Carter, all those guys were Bunning guys.
Yeah.
And so there's some truth to that, maybe if you give somebody enough time and they figure it out, you're going to be okay. Interesting dichotomy here at North Carolina. On one side, you have basketball with Hubert Davis. And I don't want to put words in Sherelle's mouth, but one thing that Sherelle has kind of pointed to is that Hubert's doing things the way he's doing it really because he feels a need to win. One, to make sure the team is able to succeed and not get too far down, late in the season. So they're a pretty good seed and have a chance to make a move in March, but also because he's a first year head coach and he's got to prove that he can win. He didn't have to win like a national championship this year, but he's got to show progress, because if he can't do that, forget it on the recruiting trail. But on the flip side, on football, you got a Hall of Famer. One thing that I found interesting is that ACC Media Day this summer, he was wearing his national championship ring from 05, right? And everybody was oohing and ahhing. This is media members. And Mack, being Mack, somebody mentioned it. So he takes it off and he flings it into the crowd. I don't know if you were there, Gregory, for that night. And it was like fish to bait.
Oh my God.
You had adults who were in the media business like flocking. Mack Brown's talking to us in a limited amount of time that we have, and you've got like 10 media reporters oohing and on over a national championship ring. I'm like, okay, if these 30, 40-year-olds are doing this, what's an 18-year-old going to do? And when I talked with Mack a week later at his North Carolina Hall of Fame induction ceremony, I asked him about some of the important things to get things rolling as quickly as he did in the first 2 years. And he said one thing that he didn't really expect to pay off the way it has is his National Hall of Fame induction, and how that just brings weight with him when he walks into a room. Everybody kind of understands and appreciates, like, whoa, wait a minute, this is a national Hall of Fame coach who's won a national championship. He's won a lot of games. And what that does is that carries weight on the recruiting trail. But he's also at North Carolina. He ain't going anywhere. He can go 4-8 next year, and he's not going to lose his job, and he knows that. And so I think it's really a situation. People are frustrated a little bit with how this season went for good reason. But he's perfectly content that, you know what, we're recruiting lights out. We're doing everything we need to do in the recruiting trail. If we keep stacking classes, as you said, Tommy, eventually that's going to cover up a lot of the deficiencies.
Kirsten did. Oh, sorry, Tommy.
No,
Kirsten, did Travis talk? Did Travis talk about Mack yesterday? And if so, what did he say?
Yeah, he talked a lot about Mack yesterday, and like I said, back in August. I mean, just saying, when he got to UNC, everybody knowing his name, and that's because Mack Brown, preaches Travis Shaw. I mean, like I said, at his commitment ceremony, as soon as he made his commitment, first person he called, Mack Brown, put him on speaker so everyone could hear. He talked about how, he got recruited, I think when he was in 8th grade by UNC, by first Coach Fedora. And then he said, when Mack Brown came and he was re-offered, it was a no-brainer at that point. So I think, Mack Brown played a huge role in him making that decision.
One of the local media guys in Lynchburg that was at Zach's signing asked Zach what he was like most excited about, like why UNC type of deal. And he was like, I get to play for a Hall of Famer. And like that was the whole answer. So I think that kind of speaks to what you were just saying, Greg, about what the two highest guys in the class think of Mack and how much that plays a role. So
I definitely have heard that from a lot of different recruits, bringing up the Hall of Famer, the national championship. Hall of Famer definitely more than the national championship. And I agree with everything Greg said. The one thing I wonder though is if North Carolina goes 500 again or under 500, let's say you're losing potentially losing the quarterback. So that could happen. Mack is going to be safe. He's going to be safe until he wants to leave. But I feel like, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on it, that it becomes more difficult to stack those recruiting classes. What do you think?
Well, someone brought up continuity for the coaching staff, and Greg.
That definitely helps.
We talked to Mack, right, about how important that is, because I think what you phrased the question as UNC is the only coastal team that didn't have a head coach or a coordinator change so far, and so I think that definitely matters. But if they keep the same results that they have been, I mean, Clemson lost their 2 coordinators, and they lost 3 highly touted recruits that were going there for those coaches, right? So that definitely plays a role.
Ross is in the chat.
I know.
But he said no to coming on.
So here, I got something for Ross. That Ross.
He eats you out of house and home. M&M peanut M&Ms. Greg, let's stay on this topic for a minute because I do think it's relevant. At least from a fan base standpoint, it felt like there was a rush to win ASAP. There was and Mack even said it, that 2021 was going to be the year. How much of that fan-driven, I don't know if rush is the right word, but the panic to win this year is because Sam Howell, and Sam Howell might not be here next year or likely won't be here next year. It seems like that has driven the angst more than anything, thinking that Carolina and Mack and the staff and the program has missed an opportunity with the best quarterback they've ever had.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that North Carolina missed an opportunity this year. And as we talked about in the offseason, everybody just assumed because the defense returned everybody but Chaz Surratt. They looked pretty good in the Orange Bowl. They had a good game at Miami last year. That the defense would take a step forward. Well, the defense did not take a step forward. And when you add in the fact that we thought the offensive line would be a strength because they returned all their starters, the offensive line was not a strength. And so you see areas that seem like pretty easy spots for significant growth. And when you pair that with Sam Howell, we saw what happened in the Coastal this year. I mean, Pitt and Wake Forest played for the ACC title. The opportunity was there.
Did anybody see that?
I mean, I saw the ratings, and their ratings were not good. So I don't think there's any doubt that this was a missed opportunity. And I think you can kind of sense that from Mack. Now Mack does a good job of framing it and saying, hey, we got a little bit ahead of our skis, and we didn't perform the way we needed to. But certainly it's a missed opportunity. And given the fact that you do lose somebody like Sam Howell, you are going to lose a number of starters this offseason. You're going to have less experience next year, although you're going to have better talent in the younger classes. I think next year you'll see a little bit better improvement. I'm not expecting a great year next year, but you're also setting the stage for 2023. And I really think if they don't have a breakout elite year in 2023, like contending for the ACC title kind of year, that's when Mack's going to have some issues with the fan base. But I think it's a pretty easy sell next year that, hey, lost the best quarterback in UNC history, one of the best in ACC history. There's going to be a little bit of a pullback. And if they can win 8, maybe even 9 games next year, 9 seems like a stretch. But you can at least say, hey, look, trajectory is going well. We're going to have a ton of players back. We're going to be really good in 2023. No more questions about talent. All that's off the table now. I think you can build towards that. But yeah, it's a 5-year deal. And Mack's older. He's the oldest coach in FBS, but he's not that old. So he's got a number of years left in him for him to make this kind of move. And look at that pretty face. Wow.
I'm here, baby.
Man. If you're gonna get in, you got to get your audio right, man. You got dog barking in the background, or
I'm on my phone.
So we're talking about. Well, no, I'll let you and Don discuss it. Don, ask Ross a question, and build off what we've been talking about.
Hey, I'm zooming in from a Christmas party. This is the dedication I show to you, Tommy.
Why aren't you dressed for it? Don is, at least.
Yeah, look. Ross, what? How many wins do you think Mack Brown needs next year to be safe?
I mean, I heard Gregory say he's not gonna get fired, but man, I think the seat's warming up, and so got to get to 7 or got to get to 8 or 9. I think next year, big year next year, huge year next year.
Can they do it without Sam Howell? They get 8 or 9.
What'd you say?
Mack Brown's seat is not hot. That point is not not entertainable. But you think they can get 8 or 9 without Sam Howell?
I think 8's attainable. The defense and some of the weapons they have on an offense. But yeah, I mean, we got 6 or 7 more wins. I mean, the Knaves will be restless with that record again. I mean, at some point you got to get back to 8 and 9, 8, 9, 10.
How many times has Carolina won over 8 games in a season, Greg?
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Hey, but the talent is better than ever now, right? They're stacking class on class on class. Number 14 class, 14 class. And then the number 8 class. So that's you got to see the improvement on the field now, right? After 3 straight classes like that.
I think 8 is attainable.
There's always the chance that one of these younger guys who hasn't really taken that step forward, it just blows up, or a few of them, just because they're so talented. So yeah, I mean, anything can happen because you have so much talent on the roster.
I mean, look at Josh Downs, right? I mean, we knew he was good, but no one knew that this season was necessarily coming outside of maybe the fact that Diami and Daz were gone and there was no one else to really get the ball to. But, I mean, that could happen to either of the young running backs. British Brooks is coming back. It could happen to him, even though he's an older guy. It could happen to Gavin Blackwell. I mean, it could happen to Andre Green. Like, we don't know. So
I'm not allowed to talk about Josh Downs.
Yeah, I was going to say we can't speak that word.
Not blah blah. Y'all
you guys,
my show with that stuff. Y'all had fun with it. We'll leave it alone.
We didn't have fun with it. It's not. We did not have fun with it. We did not.
There was nothing there. There was no there.
There was no there.
And
people
it got
just
blown
misunderstood
up.
What was said. Thank Greg for transcribing what I actually said, and that kind of died down a little bit after people actually saw what I said. How to repeat it over and over again, that I'm not reporting anything. I just heard rumors. Anyway.
I wanted to bring this up. Matt talked about the importance of getting these bowl game practices, which they are important. But he said that they're getting time with some of the guys that other schools aren't getting. But like more than half of teams are playing in a bowl game. So is it really that much of an advantage to get these bowl practices if everyone else is getting them? I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts because that stood out to me when you said that. It's like, yeah, it's important, but like, it's not like it's a unique thing that no one else gets.
Yeah, 400 teams are playing in bowl games. So, yeah, it's the same benefit everybody else is getting for the most part. I mean, ESPN even made a new bowl this year at the last minute.
That's what I was going to say. I think there was 82 teams that could get into bowl games, and then because there was one other team that was like 6-6, they actually created a bowl last minute. So every 6-6 team in the FBS could reach a bowl game.
All right, Kirsten,
participation trophies.
Yeah, really. It did allow Hawaii to play at home in a bowl game. I wish Carolina would get the Hawaii Bowl one time.
Or the Bahamas Bowl. Yeah.
I'd hit Bacot for those. Yeah, I'll cover that one. Kirsten, what's realistic next year? I know we're way early. We don't even know who's going to be on the roster, but this is what we do. We make predictions without much knowledge. What's realistic for this team?
I think 8 or 9 wins. You could say it's a stretch. Do I think they can do it? You're not going to have Sam Howell. I mean, I feel like that, I think you have to really consider that. That's a huge factor. And I mean, who's gonna be that QB1, be in that QB1 role next year? I mean, do we know? Do we think? Do we have any predictions about who will be in that QB1 spot?
I want to know what Greg thinks about that.
I would say the odds-on favorite at this point in time are Drake May.
Okay. Who is still young,
to be determined.
A lot of experience.
I think we would all agree on that, though.
Yeah.
I think the key is juggling to try to make sure the other guy doesn't transfer.
Is that fair though? I know it's necessary, but is it?
It's done all the time. I mean, no, but you gotta. What you don't want to get in a situation is that you pick a guy, and then he gets injured, and then you're throwing in someone who there's a huge step down in talent, and into the quarterback position. You know, so I think it's key to try to keep both of these guys on roster.
And because if one of them does transfer, then you've got what? Boaz and Harrell? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Love Boaz as a kid, but
yeah, but I mean, speaking of the Kirsten, you're talking about attainable. I was looking at their future schedules. I think, 8's certainly attainable because their only tough non-conference game. Or I guess you play App. Okay, so that's tough.
That's gonna be.
That's
brutal.
tough. App is good. So you got App and Notre Dame are your two tough non-conference games, and then you get. Yeah, I don't know. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean they're young, so talented, yes, but young. So I think they still have a lot of learning to do. So yeah, I mean I think it's possible, but I think this year was a lesson to not get our hopes too high, and I think. I don't have my hopes really high right now, and I think anywhere between. I think 6 is a good number. That's what I'm sticking to. 6 wins. If they do better than that, that's great. If not, they still have time to improve.
Tommy,
if they pull in Kirsten, 6 wins next year, this place is going to burn down.
Tommy, Kirsten is young and has a bright future ahead of her. But she sounds like a crusty old North Carolina fan who has been through
This year was disappointing. It was disappointing. I was one of those who had my hopes up real high for this year, and they were let down. So,
well, you didn't pick them to go 12-0 like Tommy.
I think it's possible, but I'll give them a little wiggle room if they don't reach 8.
We will make our way too early predictions when we know what the roster is going into spring practice, and then we'll get back together at the end or at the start of camp like we always do, and we'll put everybody on record. I will say this: if Carolina goes 6-6 next year, I might need to get a fire extinguisher for the Inside Carolina message boards. Go ahead, Dave.
There's some tough games on that schedule.
Who's tough? Let's look ahead. Notre Dame will always be tough.
Wake Forest is going to return basically all their starters.
Sam Hartman's coming back.
Yeah, Hartman's coming back.
That's
so we know that game Carolina's going to be down 17 in the third quarter. So do they have a quarterback that can rally them like Sam has the last 2 years? Notre Dame's going to be fine. At App's a tough game.
State returns a lot. A lot of those guys are coming back.
Leary's coming back, right?
State. Who?
Yeah, Leary's
Didn't
coming
Leary?
back.
Isn't Leary coming
Yeah.
back?
Everybody's coming back. So they'll be
Carolina
good. I mean,
had
that's
State
4
beat
tough
this year.
games.
Do you have to have a generational quarterback to
go 6-6? I mean,
I mean, Sam Howell, there's no denying how great he's been, but let's be realistic. What's his record, his career record at Carolina? I think it speaks more to Carolina football than it does to Sam Howell.
Oh, of
Greg,
course.
You always spoke about Howell's record at Carolina is what?
oh, Lord, let me do the math here.
7-6, 8
21, 21-16.
Yeah, so that is what makes
20-16.
Kirsten's prediction, way too early prediction, seem like more logical and more reasonable, given the fact that the greatest quarterback in Carolina history was producing average.
But at some point, I mean, there are very few defenses, I mean, at the Power 5 level, outside of maybe the SEC, that have the amount of talent that North Carolina's going to have next year. I mean, it's ridiculous that if you're big into recruiting rankings, Carolina's got it. And yes, some of them are young. But I keep going back to that 09 team. I mean, I think that defense had, I think, 1 4-star starting and only a couple seniors. That was one of the top 10 defenses in the country. So it can be done. I know everybody's like, we'll just give them a break. Once they're 3rd and 4th year guys, they'll be good. Yeah, but I mean, these are elite guys that should be able to play before. I mean, I get the first year, right? But when you have a full season in strength and conditioning, you should be able to produce. And so I think Mack Brown really emphasizing during his signing day press conference, we got to get pressure on the quarterback. We got to get pressure on the quarterback. And the fact that, with Hamrick and Atkinson, some of these guys coming in, that's such an emphasis. I mean, they've recruited a lot of those guys in these last couple classes, and nobody's popped yet. And I think that's a problem, and that's more of a development coaching thing than it is a talent acquisition thing.
Yeah, that what you just said is pretty important. Which continuity is a great thing. What they always say about just because you have returning players doesn't mean much if the returning players weren't good to start with.
There are 2 great lines from the Bunning era. One was North Carolina's returning all their starters. That's the good news. The bad news is North Carolina's returning all the starters. And the other one was John Bunning's defense couldn't stop a herd of charging toddlers. Pretty accurate.
Someone in the chat said, let's be honest, prime Tom Brady with this defense, UNC 7-5. So.
Well, this defense is going to be better next year.
That's what we said this year.
They were the last 3 games. Look, the entire.
What was their record in those last 3 games?
They weren't. They were against Pitt. They played good.
They were
Pitt.
against NC State until they melted down. Come on. They held State to 250 yards of offense and 10 points.
But what was their record in those 3 games? 1-2.
That may what? So they were better.
Yeah, but you got to also look at it. Like, I mean, Pitt's offense was pretty
That's
nasty.
the whole conversation. Yeah, they played great against Pitt.
Yes, and they played great against State, and really just some bonehead.
Until
the bonehead decisions that just turned it all around. So I mean, they played well. Do
they win both of those games with a little bit better grown-ups in the room?
Probably. Look, I fought this battle the entire offseason. I am not doing this again.
I'm not doing it.
After the Orange Bowl, all season, it was, North Carolina played a lot better late in the year. They played really good in the Orange Bowl. Did they show flashes? Yes. Were they significantly better late in the year last year than the first half? No, they were not. The stats do not back that up. Texas A&M averaged like 10 yards per play in the 4th quarter of the Orange Bowl. They were losing and won by 14. So, like NC State, yes, they looked really good for 3 quarters, right?
58 minutes.
I mean, whatever it was. But
55.
they didn't close. So at some point, you've got to put 60 minutes together.
Yep.
Yes, they did it against Pitt. I mean, give them credit for Pitt. They look great. Wake, they gave up 55 points to Wake. So, yeah. Go ahead.
You okay, Greg?
I'm
just letting you get it out. Just get it out. The couch.
We're here for you.
One more thing I wanted to.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong at all. One more thing I wanted to bring up about the signing day and the recruiting classes and three top 15 classes in a row. We talk about depth a lot, right? The staff talks about depth a lot, but really they didn't really play that much depth. So when do they finally get comfortable enough to play depth? Is it now that they've got 3 top 15 classes, regardless about outcome and records and whatnot? How many guys get on the field early in the season next year? Just solely based on the talent that we know that they have. Is it more than 15 guys on a unit, like on defense?
Are you talking about in this class?
Well, no, I'm just talking about how many different players do we see on defense early in the season next year based on the talent that they've brought in the last 3 years?
We can play 11 at a time. I'm joking. Don, who from the last 2 classes, we'll talk about this one they just signed, especially the early enrollees, and then the class from last year.
Okay.
How many of those guys play significant roles, B, make a difference? Because everybody's like, oh, Mack Brown's got the talent. They got to be better. Well,
if you look at the class that they just signed yesterday, and if you just go back in time, I mean, true freshmen don't play nearly as much as people think. And, the only guy that really saw significant reps was Jahvaree Ritzie of the true freshmen for the most part. So, just looking at that, you're not really even – I expect Travis Shaw to get on the field because I think you have to even – I think he's ready. But even if he wasn't, I think you have to because of his profile and all that. But, I don't see a whole lot of guys who are ready if I'm being realistic and if I'm looking back at just how history is from this current class. Now, the next class, a lot of that depends on just what the development has been with those guys from the time they signed last year till now. And I don't have that information. Obviously it's pretty safe to assume that Jahvaree Ritzie is going to see increased reps. I think you got to get Dilworth on the field. Power end up being a starter by the end of the season. So, he's one. I know I'm forgetting some. If he wins the quarterback job. J.J. Jones started to really play a lot more towards the end of the season. So I think he's a guy who they realize they need to try to get him out there and get him some reps, get him comfortable.
Nesbitt.
Nesbitt, another guy who throughout the season started to see more and more time. So, Andre Green from this class, I was talking to some sources and the conversation was more about the transfer portal, and UNC is definitely kind of looking at wide receivers, but probably won't mess with anyone just because they feel like Andre Green could be the answer to the outside receiver. That's a big gamble. Nothing against Andre Green. So if Andre Green Sr. is listening to this podcast also, Andre Green Jr. is going to be an absolute stud at some point, but there is a huge jump up in talent than what he's used to playing against. And so might take him a little bit of time, but he has all the talent in the world. So maybe he does by the end of the season. Maybe he takes a similar trajectory as Bryson Nesbitt this year. So, there's a few names out there. I know I'm forgetting someone and I'm going to get ripped for, but there's a few names that pop in my head. Thanks,
what gets me is people see freshmen play for other teams and do well, and that translates into thinking, well, why doesn't it happen at Carolina a lot? Well, if you see one guy playing well for A&M or some team, well, Tony Grimes played as a high school senior for Carolina and played a ton. That never happens. So it's not like the coaching staff doesn't play guys just because they're young. We've had that discussion, right, Greg, forever with Jason Staples, is they're not ready.
Yeah.
And the coaching staff has proven that they'll play them if they feel like they can help them win, right?
What Tony Grimes, too, though, is like a kid who, for probably the year prior to enrolling in North Carolina, every minute of his day was focused on college preparation. He was taking yoga classes in the middle of the school day. He was doing all these different – he had like 3 trainers that he would work out with. So he's a different case, but he was one of the most polished players I've ever seen come out of high school. Josh Downs, another one, but the opportunity wasn't there with him. So, but I think and I know you had a question for Greg, and I'm taking up all your guys' time, but we see these guys, these true freshmen starting and making an impact to other teams, and yes, it definitely happens. Statistically speaking, it doesn't happen as frequently as we think. The reason why we hear about it is because it's noteworthy. If it wasn't noteworthy, if it wasn't something that didn't really happen, we wouldn't hear about it as much. So of course they're going to make a big deal about it, and obviously each situation is different. But I'll pass it off to Greg. Sorry, Greg, for taking your time.
No, I think you're exactly right, because James Hurst is a good example. A 5-star kid. I think he was top 40 in the country. Started from day one and had a long career. I don't even know if he's still in the NFL, but he's with Baltimore for a long time. And people say, well, look, James did it. James was a very unique individual, like elite. Dexter Lawrence is that way. Tony Grimes is that way. For every guy like that can step in, Jacarius Conley splashed a little bit last year, but he didn't play a ton. We know what kind of player he is. But for every guy like that shows out early, you got a guy like Clyde Pender, who was a 4-star, and it just didn't work out for him. And there was apparently no indication that it was going to get much better for him, so he went ahead and transferred. That happens. You're gonna have some hits and some misses. Always go back to the fact that 247. I don't remember exactly who did it, but a couple years ago, they looked at hit rates for 4- and 5-star guys, and like 5 stars for the NFL, half of them get drafted, not first round, get drafted. 5 stars, only half of them. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. So. All these guys, as we've talked about on this podcast before, the odds are that either Zach Rice or Travis Shaw is not going to pan out.
Yeah,
I think we
absolutely.
We all think they both are, but statistically they won't.
One project I want to do for a weekly scoop, but Ben Sherman has been pushing back every time I bring it up, is I would love to go back at all the classes and look at the hit rates. And so I got to really kind of do a good job of pitching it and pushing.
Yeah, you're obviously not pitching good enough.
Yeah, because I think it would be very educational, and that we can, because one of the things, with what I do with the Weekly Scoop, with the tracking the incoming freshmen or the current freshmen, is because everyone thinks that freshmen play early, and it's statistically it's just not proven. I got a special guest here today. Come in.
What's up?
Hey, how did the basketball game go last night?
It was Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
She got 10 points, fouled out again, and they lost. So.
Hey,
fouled out again.
Got to use all your fouls.
You got to at least make them count, right?
Yeah.
No soft fouls.
Yep.
So the ACC Sports Journal, when David Glenn was there, Don probably, I'm sure he was doing it when you were with IC, because we've been with IC for so long. But he used to do a 5-year look back.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I think that's the best way to judge recruiting classes, because he would say, okay, 5 years ago, this team signed this recruiting class. He would look at all the ACC schools and say, well, this team may have had the number 1 class in the ACC 5 years ago, but right now we'd probably grade that class as 4th best.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get away from all the excitement of signing day, obviously, because that's important. But I think it does add a unique element. It's a unique perspective to kind of really accurately gauge some of these recruiting classes.
And also all this hand wringing that goes on with these guys, who signs, who you get, who you lose, and everything. It ends up it matters, but maybe not as much as people are getting angry about it. Because as you said, there's a pretty good chance that one of either Zach or Travis doesn't pan out.
What gets me is they do this in the NFL where they have, they do the redraft or whatever after a year or two, and they look at like where these guys should have been drafted. Those are NFL players.
Yeah.
Those are guys that have been picked and prodded and poked and evaluated and by everybody who there's nothing, there are no secrets, no unknowns, and they shift all the time.
Yeah.
And
the hit rate is, even in the first round, is not very good, especially with the amount of millions of dollars and manpower that are being poured into each one of these picks.
Yeah, and then you go back and look at the first round draft picks over the last 10 years, and there's plenty that you're like, I never heard of them, don't know who that is or whatever. And those dudes, and somebody made a good point, and I think this is something that we miss. Somebody said these guys not playing their high school senior years or their junior years or whatever it is because of COVID and how COVID's affected things. I think that's made a big difference as well. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting discussion, but the coaches are going to play who they think can win. Now, you can disagree with the coaches, and Lord knows I've done it plenty of times, and we all do, but they're going to play who they think can help them. And it's not that, they're getting paid to do that. Anyway, Don, you can stay, but I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to talk basketball. So Jason loves to talk basketball, so you're welcome to talk basketball.
Well, I did watch the game the other night.
Okay.
But don't even ask me who won because I couldn't tell you. No, I do know UNC won.
Wow. So stick around.
Okay. I'll take notes.
We will show you how it's done. Let me talk about Johnny T-shirt, johnnyt.com. You can get your gear there on Franklin Street. You can also get it online at johnnyt.com. 10% off if you're an Inside Carolina Premium subscriber. I figure you're a little too close to Christmas to get it by Christmas, but maybe you can try, but you can definitely go see them on Franklin Street. They support Inside Carolina. They support this podcast, and they are special folks, alumni owned and operated. They want to help you, and they want to clothe you and provide gear, and we need to support them. Do it. Let the national guys pay the bills for the audio version. We'll be right back on the Beat Live. We got a full house. All right, we're back on the Beat Live. We're going to talk basketball now. These cross pods have always been fun and have always gone over well. So if you're watching on YouTube, drop some basketball discussions. I'm going to bring in Kirsten here to talk basketball. Carolina, they play in Kentucky now. Does everybody agree that's a done deal? Greg, is that a done deal?
Pretty close to being a done deal. I mean, they're still – last I heard, they were still kind of waiting on UCLA to finalize their decision, but everything's set up for Kentucky.
Okay, so Kirsten, how important is for Carolina to go out there to Vegas and get a win? Because we've talked about the ACC as absolutely brutal. Kentucky's not as good as UCLA, but it's a name. What do you think about Carolina's chances and the importance of winning out there?
Yeah, I think it's very important. One, Hubert Davis has talked a lot about UNC being able to prove their wins this year. I mean, they beat Michigan. They've lost to Tennessee. We've had some close games against teams that we probably should have, blown out, if you will. I think this is super important for them to go up there and get a win. Chances, I'll be honest, I haven't seen a whole lot of Kentucky basketball this year, so I'm not sure what they're looking like. I don't know if they've grown a lot since last year. I know we beat them last year around this time, but I'm not sure about the chances. I know with us, if we have to be consistent on defense, which we haven't been, we have to be consistent on offense, which we haven't been. So I think it all just depends on consistency and who wants it more this game. So we'll see. But I think we definitely need this win to prove that UNC can keep up with big name teams.
Greg, it's more about playing to the standard, right? I mean, even against Kentucky, even if it was UCLA, Carolina played to the standard against Michigan, especially in the second half. They look really good against Michigan. I don't know how good Michigan is this year. They've taken some lumps. But against Furman, there was more, it was almost like, and against Elon especially, there were some of those wobbles that you saw earlier in the season. They're still figuring it out. I do like how Hubert explained why he's so positive. I thought that was a great question. I think you asked, and he discussed it. But how does he get his guys to continue to play to the standard that is necessary for this Carolina team to win games? Because in the past, they've been talented enough. In 2009, they could do whatever the hell they wanted to, and they're probably going to win. It's not like that anymore.
Right. I think that's one of the challenges that Hubert has on his hands, is because the last couple of years, I think you could really tell in hindsight with Roy's decision, he just wasn't able to really connect with the guys the way that he had been prior. And he, over the years, he really talked about how he was so hard and mean and all those things early. He really kind of had to soften up. He didn't want to coach out of fear anymore. And part of that's because of how generations change and all those kind of things. But he struggled to really connect with some of these guys last year. And so Hubert has been working through, and I think, first 6 games, he really struggled to kind of get his point across. There's a lot of, you can kind of sense some selfishness, and the effort wasn't there in certain spots. But he did a good job over Thanksgiving week, kind of getting them to connect and kind of figuring out what buttons to push. And so he hasn't gotten it completely figured out, but I think he's making the right steps. And this is going to be, he's trying to figure out what works for him. It's going to take time. It's going to take years probably. But he's made progress the last couple of weeks in really connecting with these guys. See, I think you're exactly right. I think it's a standard thing. Kentucky actually has some veteran players this year. I don't know how good they really are. I don't know why they're top 25 and Carolina's not. I don't think that's accurate. I think they probably should be switched. But it's going to be, it's one of those games that Kentucky comes out with their hair on fire. They certainly can win. And so Carolina has to play. We know they can score, but they have to show that effort defensively throughout. And that's the main takeaway for a lot of these games coming up. We can talk about the opponent all we want, but if they're not playing to how Hubert wants them to, the success down the road is not going to happen. And so it makes it simplistic, but I think that's where we are with this program right now. I think that's the most important thing.
Against Furman on, Tuesday? Greg, you mentioned it was some time in the second half you tweeted out from the IC account, too much dribbling by the guards. And I think that speaks to kind of the standard as far as it looked like. UNC obviously was handling Furman there in the second half. And I think you could kind of see that they knew that as well. And they were just they weren't really playing their normal game that they had been playing. Is that just like a one-time lull, or is that kind of where pulling back in the leadership discussion that we had at the beginning as far as preventing something like that?
I think it's guys, we saw some last year too. Guys kind of get it in their head that they have to do certain things or they want to do certain things, and they let that kind of get into their psyche and they get away from the team concept. Look at the last 6 minutes of the first half. North Carolina was killing Furman down low, as they should, because they had such a big size advantage. And yet in the final 6 minutes, the bigs took 2 shots. And what happened during that stretch? Furman came back, took the lead.
It was like a 9-0 run, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah. So, and I think what you see is they came out of halftime and they were back to pounding the ball down low. That's how they got the big lead and were able to kind of coast. So when Hubert's reinforcing that idea, everybody's like, okay, we got it. And it's just a matter of sometimes they kind of fall back into kind of how they were. And that's the job that Hubert has, is he's got them trucking along, and then all of a sudden they just kind of take a break. And I think it's frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating as fans and media watching, but I'm sure it's frustrating for the coach to be like, okay, we're doing exactly what we need to be. Wait a minute, what are we doing?
Right.
And that's just the reinforcing of ideals that has to take place.
Kirsten, we've talked about this before with the tight rotation, but I'm curious on your thoughts, because Furman put in their bench warmers while they were losing before UNC did on Tuesday.
Right. You're talking about the second half, end of the game?
Yeah, just like, what are your thoughts on Hubert's tight rotation so far? Because it's really been, unless a guy gets in foul trouble, it's really been seven players.
Yeah. I don't know. He doesn't really, in maybe a few games he's played the bench in like the last minute or 40 seconds of the game.
It's been twice.
We've talked to him about it. Yeah. Even like the freshman, Dontrez Styles, and the other guy's name is escaping me right now, but he doesn't even, DeMarco Dunn, he doesn't even play them as much. I don't know. I think, I guess he's set on who he likes to have play, and maybe he's just trying to get them to get a feel of what it's like to play with each other. But yeah, he doesn't really switch up too much when it comes to lineups. So I'm not sure why. Like I said, maybe it's just because he wants to get it set in stone. These are how these guys play with each other, and he doesn't want to mess that up. But I'm not sure why he doesn't really switch it up too much.
I think she's right. I think that's probably what it is. It's just a matter of building confidence in that core set, and then from there you can expand.
Looking at the stats, I can honestly say, looking at these stats, they are foreign to me in as far as looking at Carolina basketball, especially during the Roy Williams era.
I was about to bring Don, and I wanted.
Yeah, I was going to say Don. Don, so what do you think the importance of building depth on the basketball court is when you've got a player that likes to foul and can foul out a lot? What is the importance?
It's very important. I know someone who likes to foul out.
But I mean, look, you don't cover the team; you cover football recruiting.
Yeah.
But watching Carolina basketball, give us your take. Come on.
Yeah. So, well, I watch one game, but one of the things that Mack Brown has brought up, just to kind of complete the crossover, is that UNC, the football team, hasn't been ahead a lot this past season. And that has prevented him from throwing in some of his backups, which he would like to do, which gives them, obviously experience if someone goes down, and then also for upcoming, the upcoming seasons. And so obviously, if the basketball team if they get a significant lead to where you feel comfortable, then yeah, you want to get those guys in there for the reasons of injuries, and then the younger guys in particular for the future seasons.
Look, there he is. I mean, Don Callahan with the completing the crossover step back, and that's absolutely right.
If you know one sport, you know them all, right, Don?
That's right.
I think his daughter's off camera feeding him information.
Well, I mean, that if you look at the stat sheet, and I'm looking at it, you got Caleb Love averages 33.6 minutes. Kerwin's at 18.2, which doesn't seem like it, because it seems like Kerwin's rarely out there. It seems like Anthony Harris is out there more, but he's at 9.6. So you have those guys over 10, and then nobody else. Justin McCoy is down at 6. You mentioned Gregory, you mentioned bringing in the subs at the end of the Furman game. I noticed against Michigan, Juwan Howard called the dogs off and put his walk-ons into the bench guys in, and Carolina still had their starters out there, basically. So that was a new thing. Greg, it continues to be Hubert's force and chemistry, which has paid off in the last, couple weeks, 3 weeks. But also, I think to Sherrell's point that Sherrell makes a lot, the need to win now with these guys, because let's be honest, the top, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The top 8 that I'm looking at right here, 6 of them are not going to be there, and possibly 7 next year. He's got to win now, and he's playing like that, right, Greg?
Yes, and the other component of this that is just wild to me is how bad the ACC is. Now, why does that matter? Well, North Carolina currently is 0-2 against Q1 teams. And we know that the way the NCAA selection committee, the tournament selection committee, looks at things is they really place an emphasis on the net. And they look at Q1 wins and losses, and they also look at Q3 and Q4 losses, because those are bad losses that nobody wants. North Carolina is 0-2 against Q1. And if they're not able to play against UCLA on Saturday, and have to be replaced. UCLA, I'm just looking here. They're not as high as I thought in terms of, they're 22nd in net. So because that's a neutral site game, that would count as a Q1 if Carolina was able to win it. Kentucky is 51. So that's, I don't think for a neutral site game right now, that would count as a Q1 win. Projecting ahead, Carolina would only have 6 more Q1 opportunities, and only the Duke game at home is the one at the Smith Center that they could count on. So you're going to have to go on the road in the ACC and win against Wake, win against Virginia Tech, you win against State, win at Louisville. All these games are very important for you to be able to build your resume. And I didn't expect the ACC to be as bad as they've been thus far. But I mean, we're at a point now where some of these games will be bad losses if North Carolina loses them. And very few times in recent memory have we been able to say, well, we got to watch out for Pitt because they're a Q4 loss. Well, Pitt this year would be a Q4 loss. Boston College would be a Q3 loss because that game's on the road. And so I do think it's important for him to get this team operating at a high clip. And what some would say, and I think we've seen it with Duke, when you place such a short lineup, they tend to gel quicker. The problem with that is that you peak quicker. I mean, how many times have we seen Duke play lights out like in January and then they stumble in March? So that's I don't know exactly how you balance that. So Hubert's going to have to figure that out. That's one of the concerns there. But the importance of winnings is there because they cannot have some setbacks. And if you lose a couple of these bad games in the ACC, that can really hurt your resume.
You mentioned
as
Pitt.
bad as that. Yeah,
the
but
only team on KenPom with a negative adjusted efficiency measure.
Hey, Capel can coach. When you look at Carolina's year, this is not the year to go 18-14 and get in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
It ain't happening this year. And that's why I mentioned earlier that beating Kentucky is important, even though they're not a Q1 win. Let's look at Carolina thus far. What are we, 10 games in? 10 games in. Who's the MVP of this team? Let's go around the room. It's not the same as on the YouTube channel, but on my screen, Gregory, you're number one. Who's the MVP?
Caleb Love, right? I'm going Caleb Love just because, I mean, we knew it couldn't get worse from last year since his shooting numbers were some of the worst we've ever seen from a starting Power 5 point guard. But I didn't think he was going to be shooting over 40% from three, and I definitely think he was going to be making 27-footers, 30-footers. I don't know the distance on the three-point line, but I think 27 feet is farther than the actual line. I mean,
his rate quite the lengthy three-point shot. If it was
that would be from the mountains.
Yeah. How long is the three-point line?
21.9, I think.
Oh, okay, 25-footers. I didn't think he was going to be making those.
It's
been impressive. No, and yes, he still has his "what are you doing" moments. But no, he's been spectacular. I think he's the MVP in my opinion.
Kirsten.
I'm between Love and Davis right now, and because Gregory said Love, and because of some of those "what are you doing" moments, I'm gonna have to go with RJ Davis.
I can't disagree with either one of those. Looking at the stats, the fact that Bacot and Caleb Love have the same number of foul shot attempts, that's interesting to me.
Who's that speak more to?
Well, I mean, Bacot can't pass it to himself. So I guess that speaks to who gives him the ball. Greg, who's the MVP thus far?
Yeah, I don't think there's really any question. I think it's Armando Bacot. We've seen stretches where if he's not in the game, Carolina loses that post option because neither Brady nor Dawson really have a back to the basket game. They do a lot of other things well, but you lose that component. And that's given North Carolina problems at times. When Carolina has played their best, it's when they're kind of feeding Armando. Now, can he do a better job passing out? Yeah. Can he do a little bit better job being more assertive and establishing a better position? Yes. But when he's on, he's by far the best player on the court. And I think if North Carolina is able to make a run, he's going to have to be a really significant stud for them inside. And he did that late last year. That's why Carolina played well. And then we've seen him some games do it this year, and I think that has to continue.
Don, wake up. Who's the MVP of this team 10 games in?
I'm going to say Armando Bacot because someone asked me a question about him in an email, and I didn't know who that was. But so I educated myself, and he had a good game the other night. So, yeah.
This is fantastic. Let me ask you a question.
What was the question in the email?
Well, the question was actually a football question, but they compared – no, it was actually a top five, and they compared one of the recruits' situations to Bacot's situation.
And you were like, I don't think Bacot plays football.
I'm like, I don't know. Does he –
who's that guy?
Yeah, who's that? What position in football does he play?
Let me ask you a question that you might can answer. Don, could the Philadelphia hockey team beat Carolina in basketball, and who has the better mascot?
Better mascot is definitely the Flyers. You didn't even know that the Philadelphia team was the Flyers.
I did. I just didn't want to say it wrong. I know it's the Flyers. I follow hockey somewhat.
Yeah.
Not as much as you follow Carolina basketball.
And what was the other question?
Could the hockey team beat Carolina in basketball?
Carolina.
Who has more teeth? The Philadelphia Flyers or the West Virginia football team?
I don't know if I should answer that question.
It's all fun.
You
Sorry
guys
to all the West Virginia fans.
You guys just want to get me in trouble. You don't understand the trouble I'm already in.
No one knows the trouble you know. I think the MVP of this team is Caleb Love. I mean, thus far. And to the point Gregory made, this guy was not good last year. He struggled mightily. I mean, he would freely admit. But he worked his butt off in the offseason. And you can't look at last season and think it's even the same person, other than it's the same person out there. I mean, he is just so much better. He's so much more effective. He had some good games last year, but his play in the big games and the shots he's made is just unbelievable. I mean, what did he shoot from three last year, Greg? 21%?
23, I think.
That, yeah.
I mean.
How much, Tommy, does that speak to Kirsten's point about RJ? Because RJ is kind of taken over lead point guard role.
That's a good
which
point.
has allowed Caleb to play off the ball. And granted, he's playing with better control. But I think a lot of us question the decision to play both those guys so much at the same time. And I think it's still a risky move, just in terms of North Carolina does not have a third point guard. Which
a legitimate third point guard.
Right. So when you start playing consistently better teams, could that be a problem? It remains to be seen. But I think that part of it has helped Caleb as well.
Speaking of third point guard, because I guess it's Leaky Black at this point.
Yep.
Looking at KenPom and looking at the player page, he's got major contributors. This is based on like percentage of possessions used. Major contributors, significant contributors, limited roles, and then nearly invisible. Dawson Garcia is a major contributor with getting 24%, being used on 24% of possessions.
That he plays, yeah.
Yeah. Leaky Black is used on 10% of possessions when he's on the floor. And he's got the highest offensive rating on the team because of that. It's remarkable. It's purely remarkable in my opinion, based on the amount of minutes he has on the floor, his efficiency rating, and then he's just completely doing his job. When we talk about roles, he's not even in the role players list here. He's on the nearly invisible section, and he's extremely important to this team. He's not MVP, but he's extremely important to this team.
And that's the lowest usage rate in his career. It's never been high, but what he's at right now is the lowest in terms of.
And how much better does he look this year than he has in his first three?
See, we can have a long discussion about that, Tommy.
Well, let's have it.
Well, we've got Bryce Johnson Marker that he started to be really good his junior year, but his senior year he blew up. Kennedy Meeks, his senior year he blew up. They blew up because their offensive game came around and they were able to do more than just score. And if they didn't score, they still produced as seniors. Whereas early in their career, if they didn't score, they gave you nothing. Leaky is not scoring as much, but he's giving them more. So you tell me why he's not. I think Leaky is in the Bryce Johnson, Kennedy Meeks category of you are what you are, but you aren't if you're Leaky Black, because I think he's been great. And in fact, I'm not so sure he's not the MVP this year.
I think Leaky's been great too. I don't like the fact that Leaky's gotten as much heat as he's gotten throughout his career. I think he's a very versatile player. I disagree with the Kennedy Bryce line because I agree with you that those guys took significant steps. I don't know that Leaky really has. I think what we're seeing is he is finally on a team that has a really good offense. And so they don't need him. Like he had to take some shots last year because nobody could score. And so because they were struggling so much to score, it made his struggles on the offensive end more glaring. Now nobody needs him to score. And so he can just kind of do his thing. And, you know, he has an open shot and he doesn't take it. People just kind of laugh it off because they're not worried about scoring like maybe they were the last 2 years. I think that's more of it. I think he's always been a good defensive player. I think he's always been kind of a good leader. He does seem to have a little bit more confidence, which allows him to make a bigger impact on defense, but also he doesn't have as many good defensive players around him as he's had in recent years. So that makes him pop a little bit more. But that's my opinion on it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he's had a great year and it's a good story for sure.
So his perceived improvement is not really improvement. He is what he's always been. It's just the guys around him.
Right. The makeup around him looks better for him.
I can take that. I can understand that. I just think that he is playing more free. He looks like a guy that is comfortable doing what he does. And look, when you've got guys that take the heat off you and you can just do your thing, it makes a gigantic difference. And I think that's what we're seeing with Leaky. Somebody asked on the message board, or excuse me, on the YouTube chat, and I'll ask the question here. Kirsten, I'll start with you. Which player can Carolina afford to lose for a game or two? Bacot or Love? What do you think?
I'm going to go.
This is deep thought now. This is rapid fire deep thoughts.
I'm going to say Love. I don't think UNC can afford to miss a big. I don't think. I think Armando gives them too much in the paint right now for them to miss out. And I think even though it would hurt them to lose Love, you do still have guys like RJ Davis. You have guys that can spread the floor like Garcia, like Manic, that can, score inside and outside. But I don't think UNC can afford to lose someone like Bacot in the paint who can play with their back to the ball. Back to the goal. I don't think UNC can afford that. So I'm going to go Bacot.
You stole my answer.
I did.
That's the answer.
I think
I was coming to you after.
I don't think there's a world where you can say can't afford to lose.
I mean, the answer is neither, right? But that's not being fair to the question. So what Kirsten says is exactly right.
Bacot has to stay on the floor. And I've said that. I've tweeted that during games. This Carolina team is tragically different without Bacot on the floor, whether he's scoring or not. Because we can talk about Dawson Garcia's versatility on the defensive end. Brady Manick's not going to be a power defender down there. He's just not. I mean, he can step in for a minute, but Bacot provides something that there's nobody else on the roster, Greg, and that's what's crazy. 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago or last year?
It was last year.
It was last year. Carolina had 4 7-footers, 6'11" 7-footers that you could get something out of. Now they've got one. And I said this before, Bacot can get points back. They can't get fouls back. He has got to keep his hands off, especially outside. So is he the MVP of this team? Is he the most important piece of this team, Greg?
Probably. How important would it be to have Wes Miller?
The other Miller, Walker Miller.
Sorry. Yes.
I was about to say, we switched to a coaching question here.
Oh, Lord.
Wait. I'll cut that for social media, and I'll just post the video of Greg. How important would it be to have Wes Miller?
That was not a rumor, folks. That was Greg misspeaking.
Yes, Walker Miller. Excuse me. But if you just have a guy like Walker, we've seen what he's done this year. But just to come in and if Bacot gets into foul trouble or something, to have a guy like that to give in and just give you 5 or 10 minutes, I mean, that would be a game changer for this team. But
he's averaging 14 points and 7 rebounds in 32 minutes.
Great.
Good for him. He would. There was another White Walker, and that's a reference to Game of Thrones. That's not some sort of weird statement. Yeah. So you know what I mean. But
my ears perked up.
Do you like Game of Thrones?
I mean, I did. I mean, I haven't watched it. Yeah, but I was a fan when it was on.
It was a great show. I didn't like
it. It is a great
season,
show.
But so is Bacot my MVP? Somebody asked. I think maybe so. But even though I think most important and MVP are two different things. So what can Carolina accomplish here in the next both Saturday and in the coming weeks? When they play Virginia Tech is the 29th. Is that right?
App State next week.
Yeah.
So you got, I guess, Kentucky, App State, Virginia Tech before getting into the new year. What's necessary for this team and Hubert Davis to accomplish, Kirsten, in the next 2 weeks?
Ideally, go 3-0 and win all 3 of these games. I think it's possible, again, if they play to that standard. I haven't seen all these teams, so I don't know what they look like, but I think UNC has shown that they can compete against anybody at this point. So, yeah, as long as they play to that standard, I think they can. I think we need it. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Gregory, I mean, we keep talking about depth. Is it really necessary? It's pretty clear 10 games in that the rotation is what it is. Is depth necessary?
I guess not. But I mean, to a certain point, you have to have it just in case, like when Leaky got in foul trouble and then Anthony Harris came in, right? Things like that. So, I mean, you need to be able to play more than 5 guys, which they can. But as far as the immediate future here, these next 3 games, I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with avoiding lulls to where you're not doing what you had been doing in previous moments of the game, right? Staying within the game that you know that you should be playing. An ACC play that can get, as they kind of go through, that can be easier said than done because you kind of get lost in just, the intensity of all of these games. But the ACC is not that good, so I think it's even more important. I think what KenPom has them projected 13-7 in ACC play right now. I don't think that's good enough, considering where the talent on this team and what they can accomplish. And I think to do that, it's going to keep the defensive intensity, because what we talked about before the Thanksgiving break, right, after Connecticut and how bad that was and what the team needed to do, the changes that needed to be made, those changes were made. So now it's about continuing that forwards, and I think you can do that and finish 2021, and then they're sitting at 11-2, which not many of us, when we talked about our predictions through the year, had them sitting at 11-2, right? Greg, you had them losing either Georgia Tech or Virginia Tech, which could still happen, right? They still have to play Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has been very, very up and down. I mean, didn't they lose to Notre Dame by 20?
Lost 4 of their last 6.
Right.
Has somebody gotten hurt, or are they just losing games?
They're just
struggling a bit.
So that, with the way the ACC is lined up, is you're going to get a team that might not be good because they've struggled, but they could still give you a tough game. And so UNC just needs to stay focused and prevent those lulls, like I said. So that's kind of what needs to happen, and I think that's where someone needs to step up and be like, look, guys, this is what it's going to be like. This is what we can do.
Greg, we're close to an hour and a half in. What does Hubert Davis need to accomplish in these next 2 weeks leading into the new year? I mean, you got Virginia Tech. I think Tate Frazier, if I'm not mistaken, when we had him on last week before, said he thought Virginia Tech was the best team in the conference.
He did say that.
And they promptly have lost 4 of 6. So good call, Tate. Remind me not to bet your money lines.
Well, he had good reason to say that, because you look at their lineup. I mean, they returned basically everybody. They got Storm Murphy in. I mean, it's a really good looking lineup, but just for whatever reason, they have not put it together. here in the early part of the season.
And I'm gonna ask this question, I've asked it already, but I got a bad feeling watching this team play 7 guys. And I know we used to give Roy Williams hell for playing too many, but I just don't think 7 is sustainable, Greg. Even with a bad ACC, now he may get away with it this year, and if he does, great. But I just think there's going to come a time where something happens and they need more than 7 or 8. Your thoughts on that? I mean, it is what it is. We've talked about it a lot, the need to win now and all that stuff. But it just seems like it is walking a thin line that maybe is not necessarily needed to be walked.
Yeah, 2 things here. One, I think your comment about Roy is spot on. I mean, it seemed like for especially last 4 or 5 years, we were like in damage control on this podcast in November and December because we were telling people, look, like he's going to play 9 or 10 guys. He wants to see who can help him. Yes, they may lose a couple games because of it. It's just what he does. We may get to a point where we're saying the same thing about Hubert and how he manages. We won't know. The other thing, though, is I really thought, and I still think, that the way the roster is set up, he could get really creative with matching other teams. Like, if you're playing a team that's really good offensively but struggles defensively, I mean, you could put a lineup out there with Caleb and Anthony Harris and Leaky Black and maybe even Justin McCoy at the 4 and then Armando at the 5. Now, that lineup may not score a ton of points, but they would be really good defensively. And on the flip side, if you're playing a team like maybe Clemson, who's really good defensively but can never score, maybe you go with Caleb and RJ and Kerwin as your primary guards, and then you could not even Bacot. You could put Manick and Garcia in there for key stretches. I mean, those guys could score in bunches. But we haven't seen any suggestion that he's interested in doing that. And so I think more than anything, that's kind of where it's lacking. There's some opportunities for some unique things that he just hasn't shown a desire to do for whatever reason. And so it remains to be seen. But yeah, you would like to see, especially Kerwin, to be able to be given time to work through his issues. I still think he's probably the best pure scorer on this team. And so you would like for him to be feeling pretty good about himself as you get into the ACC play. And I just don't think he's seen enough minutes right now to be able to get into that kind of mindset.
Yeah, I wanted to add that to my answer to the question, what does Hubert Davis need to do the next 2 weeks? Is get Kerwin to be Kerwin again.
How do you do that, though? I mean, what do you do? Give him 20 minutes?
No, I think it's a behind-the-scenes thing at this point. Something that we might not be able to see. It's definitely increasing his minutes. But something's going on. Because when he's out there, he just doesn't look like where he knows where he needs to be, which was kind of some of the issues with other guys last year, right? We talked last year. It's like, I mean, you've got 2 guys running to the same spot on the floor sometimes. That's kind of what I've seen with Kerwin, and I think it might be a behind-the-scenes type of deal to get him more comfortable and then increasing his minutes. But I think that needs to be accomplished, like Greg just said.
I was going to ask, do we think it has anything to do with Hubert Davis' system, like the way he just runs his offense? Or because, I mean, with Kerwin, it's pretty much, I mean, we've seen him try, but he can't really create his own shot right now, or he struggles to create his own shot. And it's kind of just, he's a setup shooter, but I don't feel like there hasn't been a lot of situations on offense where he's been wide open for, someone to kick and he shoots. So, I mean, do you think it's the offense or?
Well, that's what I don't know, because Brady Manick can't create his own shot, but he's
6'9", and he's 6'9", 6'10", and he can shoot over people.
Sure. And Dawson's the same way on threes, but they can catch and shoot, so why can't Kerwin get to spots to catch and shoot? That's how I view it.
I think it's separation value.
What did you say, Greg?
That's
I think
a
it's
fancy
separation
word.
value.
Go there.
So we've talked about Leaky, right? We know this team can score where they've struggled with defense. So there is a desire and a desperate need for a really good defender. I mean, that's perfect for Leaky, right? I don't need to score. I can be a really good defensive player. Boom, there's my role. Kerwin last year had to be on the court because he was the only guy that could score. Well, this year there's a lot of guys that can score. He's not a good defender. And so you lose that value of you creating a role for yourself. I think Kirsten's right that some of it is that the offense is a little bit more unique. And so guys that can create are going to have better success. Yeah, Manick's not that way, but Manick's a big guy. And so because he's got guys that are having a tough time guarding him, that makes it easier for him on the perimeter. That's not the case with Kerwin. And so I think it's just a couple of those things. It's not like it's a schematic issue. I think maybe the need to have to create on your own is a little bit part of it. But I really think it's just a matter of Anthony Harris is getting more opportunities than Kerwin, really. And we know Kerwin's a significantly better scorer. So why is Anthony playing so much? Because he brings defense. And I think that's the main thing.
Don, what do you think?
Yeah, Don, they want to know what Donnie Scoops thinks about
I am
Kerwin.
the Flyers are in overtime, so that's my focus right now.
Okay. So yeah, y'all wanted Don's response. It's about the Flyers and that daggone orange Gumby looking mascot.
Oh, Gumby.
Hey, don't make me cuss. That's a great Gumby's not a detriment. I think with Kerwin, when I see him out there, I remember JJ Redick, and people are going to hate that, but did JJ Redick ever stop running off screens? Ever?
No.
I mean, the dude ran off more screens, and I mean, to be honest, and he's made a ton of money in the league. He was kind of like Steph Curry, where he's just constantly running off screens, getting open. Kerwin doesn't do that. I haven't seen him do that.
Yeah, but it was Redick and then Sheldon Williams, and that was basically all of Duke's offense. And I think there's too many other options and Hubert said he's got to set more plays, but that gets into kind of what Kirsten's talking about with the offense. Mm-hmm. Like if you're having to call set plays for guys time and time again, you lose the ability for people to create on their own. And I think that's part of it. If you can, Caleb and RJ can just kind of free flow and do the freelance offense that Roy always liked. Kerwin can't do that as much, so you've got to create opportunities for him. And a lot of those screens for JJ were set plays. They just did them so many times. It looked like it was just a natural part of the offense, but all that was designed to get him looks.
Yeah, and I think Kerwin's is a war thing, and that's wins over replacement. And his is points over replacement. I mean, if he's going to score 10 and give up 12, then you play somebody else that's going to hold him down. So he'll get it, but Hubert's going to win now. Let's wrap this one up. We're over an hour and a half. We'll have another show next week right before Christmas. But Don, I want to know your Christmas list.
Oh, man.
I need your Christmas list, both related to what we're discussing with sports and also unrelated. What's the big ticket item for you personally? What's the big ticket item for Carolina football this offseason?
Carolina football. I think an offensive line to protect whoever is the quarterback next year. Obviously some things can shift around based off of who leaves the team, who stays, and that sort of thing. And then just to find some sort of great combination with the defense. I think that there's a ton of talent on the roster on the defensive side of the ball. And I think maybe one of the issues is trying to piece together that talent. I'm not a big gift person. So I have told my wife, I know that she purchased something from Best Buy for $130, even though I did not, I told her not to.
I mean, you're like searching her. Do you monitor the credit cards or what?
I am the financial figure in my household. So
it's the Soviet Union over there.
I told her no gifts for Don. I do not want any gifts. If I want something, I go and get it. I'm not a big gift person, but I am excited for my wife for her Christmas because I don't think she's listening to this. But she kind of knows already. We're getting an outdoor projector for our fire pit sort of thing. So I'm psyched because I actually, even though it's a gift for her, it's one of those like partial gifts, like gift for her, gift for me, because then, I got tired of bringing out the TVs to watch games.
Nice. So it's kind of like buying your wife a frying pan.
Yeah.
She's going to use it to cook something for you.
Or hit me with it, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak to that. Actually, I'm buying a frying pan tomorrow. So, but yeah, so party at Don's house to watch football. As long as it's not Philadelphia Flyer hockey,
I invite Tommy over. Tommy and Greg. Greg's actually worse than Tommy. Greg's never been in my house, and Greg lives like probably walking distance.
I've been to your house before, haven't I?
You have not this house.
If you have to ask,
that's a classic deflection.
Yeah,
I've been there, right?
No, true. I'm
my
pretty sure I have though. Yeah.
No, not this house. And you live you live behind Target, right?
Right. I live about 2 miles from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He lives in the gated community back there.
They don't allow me in that community. That's why he has to come to my house.
Gregory, you're at the top of my screen. What's the Carolina wish list in the off season for football or current basketball? And what's your personal wish list?
For football, let's figure out who your quarterback's going to be sooner rather than later. Whether or not it's public knowledge. It doesn't need to be public. We don't need to know, but they need to know. They can't. Two quarterback system. That would drive me crazy personally, and I know it would drive the fan base crazy, and I know it would drive Matt crazy as well. Even though he said before that he's been okay with two quarterbacks. So that's my Carolina football Christmas wish list. Basketball, it's just minimize the lulls, minimize the times when you're like, what the heck is going on? If you play tough and you lose, you play tough and you lose. But minimize that. And for myself personally, I needed a new pair of like over-ear headphones for work and for pleasure. When I'm like in the Zoom calls after games, it's like constantly going in and out, and I can only hear half the time. So that's on my personal wish list. I asked
you gotta call Uncle Buck for that.
Yeah, you need to call.
Yeah, but like I don't know.
The Presidente. Are you going to be in Charlotte, by the way?
I don't know yet. We're still waiting to hear about credentials.
No, you don't need a credential. You need to be in Charlotte because we might have some breaking news about Inside Carolina Live in Charlotte at some point.
Also, speaking of Inside Carolina Live, I wanted to tease that January 8th. If you don't listen to the radio show, you're missing out, first of all. But the plan is January 8th to add a video component like we do with this. So if you don't like listening to the radio, you can watch YouTube Live. You can see Tommy and Joey and myself in the studio Saturday mornings starting January 8th.
Well, we got to increase the cool factor. We're going to have to get Kirsten to come in on Inside Carolina Live on Saturday mornings. Ms. Clark, what's your Christmas list for Carolina football, Carolina basketball, and personally?
Carolina football, two things. Figure out QB1. And it is what it is. We need to know. Second one, off season, I need them to work really hard on this defense so it's clean, solid come actual season. Carolina basketball, if they can beat Kentucky, that's the last game I think before Christmas, I'll be happy. And I hope it's a solid, clean beat. Again, not a lot of inconsistency. Don't want it down to the wire. Just a solid win against Kentucky. I'll be happy. And my personal, this has been great, and I want to come back on the podcast, but I feel a little bit left out because everybody's got these cool headsets with the mic, and I'm over here with AirPods.
Yeah, talk to Uncle Buck.
We can make that happen.
Yeah. So
no, look, you see four dorks on the screen. Let's be honest. So we can arrange it. Buck hooks up the guests, so whatever you need.
Yeah, so I want to be in the cool headphone podcast squad.
Is actually, I think it's more of a pain, like especially if it's a long podcast. I wish we didn't. I just
do your ears hurt, Don?
My ears do hurt.
Well, you got them big old ears anyway. I like it because I can move and I can like mess around, and it's still got a mic here.
Yeah.
Because when I used to have the standalone mic, I'd get fussed at because nobody could.
I mean, when I had mine, I was constantly getting yelled at.
Yeah,
the sounds
Yeah, that's. I mean, I have one of those, and I prefer to use that, but I was told strictly not to.
Yeah, you might want to monitor the YouTube chat there, Gregory. Greg Barnes, what should Jay Bateman, Phil Longo, and Mack Brown be wishing for Christmas? What should Hubert Davis and his staff be wishing for Christmas? And what do you get for somebody that has it all in the Barnes household?
Yeah.
You can't say I wish for a short game or a putter because you got all that.
That's about it. I'm kind of like Don. Like I'm at this point in my life, I want to make sure the the wife and the kids have everything they want, because if they're happy, then typically I'm happy. So it's it's very easy for me. Trying to. I tell you, I've been married for. Oh Lord.
You better get it right. This
18
is
years.
18 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
So trying to find a gift that that is a surprise is always a challenge. So that's kind of the difficult thing this time of year. I think for Mack and the football team, this needs to be an off season of development. We can talk about recruiting; it makes people feel good. We can talk about wins and losses, but for this program to take the next step, there needs to be a significant growth in the development phase. We need to see guys in September who look different physically, but play different, with more aggression, smarter, being in the right spots. All those things need to improve for this program to move forward. So I think this is the off season to do that. I think that's the critical thing. And then, basketball-wise, I think Hubert's got to keep recruiting. We knew that he had talent in place for this year, and they're going to have a pretty good year. What is a good year? I mean, we'll figure that out in the months to come. I've always thought kind of a Sweet 16 would be great for this team as an accomplishment. But keep recruiting well, because you're going to lose a lot of guys off this team, and that sets you up for years to come. If you can't replace the guys you've got, that's going to make this a longer, bumpier road for Hubert. So I think the recruiting angle is most important for him.
Kenny Pickett skipping the Peach Bowl.
And Kenneth Walker.
Well,
I wonder
Kenny Pickett's going to be the new starting quarterback in Pittsburgh. So
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah,
he's good, and he plays in the same building, so he might as well. But that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if the 25 Pittsburgh Panther football fans freak out on opt-outs as much as Carolina fans did last year. It worked out well for a guy like Javonte Williams. This has been fun. Don, I invited you and you showed up, so I guess I need to return the favor whenever.
Yeah, what happened with Ross? He was here for 5 minutes and left and didn't even say bye.
That is classic Ross right there.
It's classic Ross.
If anybody knows Ross Martin, that's him in a nutshell in these last hour and a half.
Talking to us on his phone with like some woman yelling in the background. That's Ross.
He had the blue shark
Ross
flowing.
Yeah. So speaking of blue shark, for the bowl game, we hope to be in a parking lot near Panther Stadium or Bank of America Stadium, having Inside Carolina Live. It'll be an early one, I guess, 8:30 in the morning to 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning before 11:30 game. So Gregory, your attendance has been requested.
Oh, I'm aware.
Kirsten, you need to come by the tailgate and hang out with us.
I do.
And so we can make it all happen. Greg Barnes, I saw your news and what you're up to, so you got no excuses. You need to be at Graham Street, so it should be a fun time. Don, I know you'll be watching a hockey game somewhere.
So I mean, it's a bowl game, so I'll definitely be watching. I mean, it's Carolina, so I'll be watching, but I don't miss very many bowl games. I'm excited for tomorrow.
You're stoked about the Toledo Middle Tennessee game.
I am stoked.
Do you bet on all of these bowl games or something?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Hey, look, there's only one way you can buy a sweater like that. Look, the man cave is live. He's got like 4 or 5 TVs in the man cave now. He may be getting a projector on the side of the house. It's going to be a fantastic time at the Callahan household.
Recruiting pays the bills, apparently.
Yeah, you all are invited. Anytime, open invitation. Whenever you want, come on by.
Just drop your address in the YouTube chat.
No, but the live stream that we did, we had a guy who was kept on asking questions about whether we needed more Bojangles, and he was going to drop it off. And I was like, Ross, do not answer him. Do not respond to him in the chat.
That was your DoorDash guy. He was trying to get or your Grubhub guy. He was trying to figure out what y'all needed, man. Why it's innocent.
It's
not stalkerish.
It's innocent until you see him standing in the driveway at 2:00 in the morning.
I want to know where Travis Shaw is going. Let's get out of here. Let's break this one off. Guys, it's been fun. Kirsten, Don, appreciate y'all joining this rowdy bunch. Next week, I guess we'll try to have one a couple days before Christmas. We'll see. Might be too deep in the eggnog. Carolina football, Carolina basketball. We'll keep it real right here. Inside Carolina Podcast on the Beat Live. Thanks, Gregory. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We'll talk again soon.
Recording.